Hey FIG friends, Beth here from Como Park Zoo and Conservatory, and I'm really excited to come to you from the North Garden here at the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory so that we can share, thanks to the Legacy Amendment, a really dynamic story about pollination here in our gardens, which is so cool. We actually have several representatives of this amazing group of species. We have the figs we're going to be talking about, all of their drama and deception, which can make any reality TV show look like the plot is pretty simple. Here we have our common fig, which is actually one of the most common species in the world and most widespread because it was actually used by humans long time ago. It was one of the first plants actively cultivated by people in the Middle East around about 11,000 years ago. And the amazing part of this story is not just how long and ancient this relationship with humans is as a food source, but this has been a really long-standing, important food resource and shelter resource for many animals around the world through different figs. In fact, the fossil record about figs and their unique pollinators goes back as early as 34 million years ago. So this is quite a story. So I'm so excited to be able to share this with you. There are hundreds of different species of figs, and they come in all sorts of different shapes and forms, from our common fig to over here, one of the biggest leaves in our conservatory in the North Garden, the dinner plate fig, named for its incredibly large leaves, all the way to our bow tree, which we'll see a little bit later. And if you ever get a chance to check out Tropical Encounters, our strangler fig is in there, and it's actually an epiphyte growing on top of another tree and eventually taking it over, which is pretty cool. Now, the story of fig pollination is really unique because of how it's pollinated. You see, fig flowers aren't these open, accessible flowers for just anything. They're actually an inverted flower. The flowers are actually inside this inflorescence, and inside of this multiple fruit forms and actually makes, it's not one single true fruit, although I'll refer to it as a fruit during our video today. It's a multiple fruit, not too different from grapes and pineapples. The difference is the flower is on the inside, so the only way to pollinate it is to get inside there to do so. And the pollinators that do this are really special because they have to be able to fit into a very specific space, almost like a lock and a key. They have a very special partnership, and only certain individual species can fit in. Sometimes they're entirely unique to the species they pollinate. Here we have an example from our dinner plate fig. This is what this is actually called as a syconium, and this is actually the inside of this floral body. You can see all of these different little fluffy things. They look really fuzzy. These are actually all the flowers, and we have all of our little flowers in here where a fig wasp, which is our pollinator, would climb on inside and would be able to pollinate it. Now, fig wasps are really hard to see, so I've brought a visual example for you today. This is a fig wasp. Don't freak out. This isn't to scale. These are incredibly tiny, just 1.5 millimeters long, itty bitty little things that you would barely even be able to see. You can see this has a really flattened head structure because the only way to fit into the syconium is through a very tiny hole. And when the females go in to lay their eggs, their special pollinator relationship is they get food and shelter to raise their babies. So females are going in to lay their eggs so that they're able to have a safe shelter. But to get into that tiny hole, they end up actually ripping off their antenna and their wings to get in there. So the females are stuck in there after they lay their eggs. After they've laid their eggs, the babies develop in a safe gall, a woody structure that the little insects form around themselves from the plant, and they're able to eat and get shelter. And then they hatch out. The males hatch first, and they look for females to mate with. The females then hatch out after, and as they're wandering around trying to find an exit, they end up getting covered in pollen. The males are actually the ones who make the exit, chewing a hole through the fig that the females then follow, looking for another fig to then pollinate with the pollen they picked up on their way out. Now, I mentioned that fig wasps go into those figs and they lay their eggs and die. And I'm sure the question you're wondering is, wait a minute, are there dead wasps in my fig Newtons, and you're probably freaking out a little bit. This is so good, I don't mind. Actually, don't worry. The good news is most of our domesticated figs, the common fig, are usually cultivated in a special way and have also been selected so that they can fruit without needing cross-pollination. However, even if there happened to be a stray wasp that got in there, the good news is it's probably not wasp you're eating. As the fig develops, the enzymes in the fruit actually dissolve and break it down. Kind of like we're all made of stars. I suppose this is made of wasps, but in a really abstract way. So you don't have to worry about it. The crunchy bits you get in a fig Newton, they're actually just seeds. So don't worry, you can enjoy it in peace. You can even get whole figs to eat and enjoy. And inside, again, those little crunchy bits, they're just seeds. So this is a tasty, delicious fruit that you don't have to worry about. You can enjoy. Now, these are really good. It's also quite chewy, I apologize. Now, the story of figs is actually way more complicated than just this. So there's actually a lot of betrayal. So first off, the only way that these plants can successfully get pollinated is by killing their pollinators, which is kind of brutal. But the females do get a chance to reproduce, which is totally worth it. So there is actually a reasonably symbiotic relationship to this. And this happens when there are monoecious flowers. In the case of dioecious flowers, where individual flowers are either male or female, the situation gets a little different. In some figs, there's actually a situation where the only way they can reproduce is by reproducing inside the male fruits. So they get in there and they're able to reproduce. The females get covered in pollen. They leave. The goal is to get to a female fruit. But those ones, the flowers are too small for them to successfully reproduce in. So the female would go in there, rip off her antenna and her wings, and she'd die, just for the benefit of the fig. Now this might seem brutal and unfair, and you would think that the species wouldn't survive, but they reproduce in such large numbers that some of them end up going over to the male flowers, and while they don't make new figs, they definitely successfully are able to make brand new wasps, which works out. So it has actually continued for a really long time. Now you might think that all of this game of deception and lies is just for the figs. After all, in the case of those figs, the female flowers even give off the same pheromone, calling in for a safe place to lay their eggs to the female wasps as the male flowers do, tricking their pollinators. But pollinators have learned to circumvent some of these systems too. In the case of some fig wasps, they don't help out at all. This fig wasp here is a cheater. It never goes inside the fig. You see this really long ovipositor. It's even reinforced with zinc to make it super stiff. They'll actually pierce through the wall of the fig syconium and they'll lay their eggs inside without giving any pollinating service at all. In fact, some fig wasps have taken this a step further. They're not just feeding off of the fig, they're actually parasitizing the other fig wasps that are in there, and they can smell the special pheromones that those fig wasps give off, so they know when there's tasty snacks inside a fig. This seems really intense, right? This is so dramatic, and it's so small, and a fruit that most of us don't give a lot of thought to, that we often forget about it. But figs are really important for conservation. There are so many things important to figs, not just cultural significance, such as our bo tree, which is really important to the Buddhist religion, but figs are also important to biodiversity. Studies have shown that where figs are planted, they're able to provide not just food and shelter over a broad canopy space. They're actually able to promote biodiversity from the species that rely on them. So by having figs in an area, it really does help out a rainforest. So it's important for us to help promote rainforest conservation, as well as sustainable farming practices to help encourage our figs and their friends to survive. You can explore more about figs by checking out a fig recipe. You could swing by and try a fig baked good, or go to a store and try something cool. We'll have some links on our website for some recipes that you could try at home. You could also explore some really cool different activities with figs, as well as coming and visiting us at the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory by advanced appointment, so that you can check out all our amazing figs and think about the stories of drama and deceit that they have. Thank you so much for joining us, and tune in for next week, where you can find out how bees think, find, and navigate around. See what's on a bee's brain in the next episode. Thanks, and we'll see you there.